I'm sitting in my kitchen right now, watching the light come through the same window I've looked through for 63 years, and I can tell you the exact pattern the sun makes on this floor at 9:47 in the morning. My name is Eleanor Chen. I'm 109 years old, and I'm about to tell you something that might save your mind. People ask me all the time how I still remember everything. They want to know my secret. They think maybe I took some special pill or did crossword puzzles every morning or ate a certain kind of fish. But that's not it at all. What I did was something most people are terrified to do, and I didn't even know I was doing it until it was too late to stop. Let me take you back to 1962. I was 45 years old, living in San Francisco, working as a secretary at a shipping company. I had the same desk for 11 years. I knew every file, every client, every form by heart. I could do my job with my eyes closed. My husband Frank worked at the post office. We had a routine: dinner at 6, television at 7, bed at 10. Weekends we visited his mother or my sister. It was comfortable. It was safe. And I was slowly disappearing. I didn't notice it then, but looking back, I can see it clearly. My mind was getting softer, not in a medical way, in a worse way. I was forgetting how to be curious. I'd have the same conversation with Frank every night about nothing. I'd see the same people and say the same things. My sister would tell me stories, and I'd forget them by Tuesday because I wasn't really listening anymore. I was there, but I wasn't present. Does that make sense? I was alive, but I had stopped paying attention to being alive. Then something happened that I didn't want to happen. Frank's company transferred him to Seattle. We had to move. I was furious. I didn't want to leave my job, my apartment, my routine. I cried for 3 days. I told him I wouldn't go, but we needed the money, and eventually I packed everything into boxes and we drove north. Seattle felt like a foreign country to me. I didn't know anyone. The streets were different. The weather was different. I had to find a new job, make new friends, learn a new bus route. I hated every minute of it for the first 6 months. I called my sister every week complaining. I wanted my old life back. But then something strange started happening. I noticed I was remembering things again, sharp, clear memories. I'd meet someone at the grocery store and remember their name a week later. I'd read the newspaper and actually retain what I read. Frank and I started having real conversations because we were both figuring out this new city together. I had to think about everything I did because nothing was automatic anymore. I got a job at a community center helping run programs for kids after school. I'd never worked with children before. It terrified me, but I learned. I had to learn their names, their personalities, what made each one tick. I started taking a ceramics class on Tuesday nights because a woman I met at the library invited me, and I didn't have an excuse to say no. My hands had never touched clay before. I was terrible at it. But my brain was working in ways it hadn't worked in years. I didn't understand what was happening to me until much later. I thought I was just adjusting to a new place, but what was really happening was that my mind was waking up from a long sleep. Every new street I walked down created new pathways. Every new person I met made my brain work to remember and categorize and connect. Every time I failed at something and had to try again, my mind got stronger. Frank died in 1979. I was 62. I thought about moving back to San Francisco then, back to familiar ground. My sister said I should come home, but I realized something sitting in that empty apartment after the funeral. Home wasn't a place anymore. Home was the feeling of my mind being alive and engaged. And I knew if I went back to the familiar, I'd start dying in the way that matters most. So I stayed in Seattle, and I kept doing things that scared me a little. When I was 68, I took a job teaching English to immigrants, even though I'd never taught anything in my life. When I was 73, I started learning Mandarin because some of my students spoke it, and I wanted to understand them better. When I was 81, I moved to a smaller apartment in a neighborhood I'd never lived in because the rent was cheaper and the change felt good. People my age would tell me to slow down, to stop making things hard on myself. They'd say I deserved to rest. And maybe they were right, but I noticed something about the ones who rested. They started forgetting first, little things at first, then bigger things. Then they'd look at me with these confused eyes like they couldn't quite remember who they were anymore. I'm not a doctor. I never went to college. But I've lived long enough to see the pattern. The people I knew who held on to the familiar, who stopped trying new things, who built their lives around comfort and routine, they were the ones who lost themselves first. And the ones who kept moving, kept learning, kept being uncomfortable, they stayed sharp longer. My neighbor right now is 76 years old. She tells me she can't remember what she did yesterday, but she's lived in the same house for 40 years, watches the same television programs, eats the same meals, talks to the same 3 people. Her life is a loop, and loops don't require memory. They require nothing. I can tell you what I did yesterday because yesterday was different from the day before. I had a video call with my great-great-grandson who's teaching me about something called podcasts. I read an article about climate change that I didn't fully understand, so I had to read it twice. I tried a new recipe for dinner that came out terrible, and I had to figure out why. My brain had to work. And when your brain works, it stays. Here's what I think happens. When you do the same things over and over, your brain builds these deep grooves. It's efficient. You can do everything without thinking. But those grooves become ruts, and ruts become graves. Your mind needs resistance. It needs friction. It needs to fail and adapt and struggle and solve. That's not stress, that's life. The research says I'm right, though I didn't know that until recently. My doctor told me there's studies showing that people who keep learning new skills, who stay socially engaged with different people, who put themselves in unfamiliar situations, they have lower rates of dementia. Something about neuroplasticity and cognitive reserve. I don't pretend to understand the science, but I understand the lived experience. I'm 109 years old, and I remember my childhood in perfect detail. I remember conversations I had 40 years ago. I can tell you the names of every student I taught and something unique about each one. Not because I'm special, not because I have good genes, though maybe that's part of it, but because I never let my mind rest in the comfortable place. Every single day, I do something I haven't done before, even if it's small. Yesterday, I listened to a type of music I'd never heard. Today, I'm learning about how YouTube works because someone told me people watch videos here, and I wanted to understand why. Tomorrow, I'm trying a new walking route through the neighborhood. These aren't big things, but they're different things, and different keeps the mind alive. I watch people half my age already living like they're elderly. Same routine every day, same commute, same desk, same lunch, same evening. They're 40 years old and they've stopped learning. They've stopped being curious. They think they're being productive, but they're just being repetitive. And I want to grab them and shake them and tell them they're practicing for dementia. You don't have to move across the country like I did. You don't have to learn a new language or change careers. But you have to do something that makes you feel a little bit lost. Because when you're lost, your brain has to make a map. And making maps is what keeps the brain working. Talk to people who aren't like you. Read things you don't already agree with. Go places you've never been. Try activities that make you feel incompetent. Fail at something new instead of succeeding at something old. Make your life a little bit harder in the ways that matter. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you're too busy. You're thinking you're too tired. You're thinking you'll do it later when you have more time. But later is when it's too late. The time to build a strong mind is before you need one. You can't start exercising after the race begins. My father died with dementia. He was 78. The last 5 years of his life, he didn't know who I was. It was the most painful thing I've ever watched. And I remember thinking even then that he'd lived the same day for 30 years. He worked the same job, came home to the same house, had the same dinner, read the same newspaper. He was a good man, a kind man. But he stopped growing when he was 45 and his mind followed. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to get to 70 or 80 or 90 and realize you can't remember your life because you never really lived it. I don't want you to look at your family with confused eyes because your brain forgot how to make new memories decades ago. So here's what I'm telling you, and I'm telling you this as someone who has lived longer than almost anyone you'll ever meet. Your mind is not a thing that just happens to you. It's a thing you build. every day, with every choice, with every new experience or refused experience. The comfortable path leads to fog. The uncertain path leads to clarity. I've walked both. I know which one keeps you whole. I'm 109 years old. I remember everything that matters. And if you want the same thing, you need to start making your life just a little bit harder in all the right ways. Not tomorrow, today, right now. After you finish listening to this, go do something you've never done. Talk to someone you've never talked to. Learn something that confuses you. Feel incompetent, feel lost, feel alive. That's how you keep your mind. That's how you avoid becoming a ghost in your own life. And that's all I have to say about it.